results of Taiwan's local elections mean for Taiwan? Well, today I speak with political scientist at National Chengchi University, Nachman. Lev, thank you for joining me. And why do you think the DPP performed so poorly in the local elections this time?
I think it's important to keep in mind that there is no one grand explanation that can really explain the DPP's poor performance. I think there's a couple of intertwined explanations. The first of which, of course, it's a midterm local election, and in pretty much every democracy, the opposition party does better in midterms than the party in power. Historically, it's also important to remember that the KMT's local network ties are much stronger than the DPP's. And finally, there is just a sense of general dissatisfaction with the DPP, how they ran their election campaigns, the different candidates and agenda setting that was done by the DPP, by their voter base. Even though you have this sort of poor performance from the DPP, it's also important to remember that these results are not indicative of a poor performance in 2024, nor are they indicative of the KMT doing well in 2024.
Do you think there's dissatisfaction with President Taiwan?
You know, public opinion polls before the local election did not necessarily indicate that she was unpopular. I think framing these results as a de facto referendum on Tsai would be a bit of an overstatement. But, you know, she is taking full responsibility for the party's lackluster results and has since stepped down as party chair.
So how do you think China might take advantage of the recent election results?
There's only so much it can really do because it's, one, very close to the national election, and two, you know, even though mayors are in a position to have city-to-city diplomacy, ties between the PRC and Taiwan are so poor right now that I don't really know that there's going to be any sort of meaningful reach out from the PRC to any of these new KMT mayors.
How do you think that the TPP did, which is, you know, Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je's party?
Gao Hong'an doing well, I think, was definitely surprising given that there were so many scandals surrounding her campaign. What was more surprising is that Huang Sansan actually did much poorer in the polls than I think a lot of us anticipated. Now, Ko is likely to run for president regardless of how his party did in these local elections, but, you know, without doing as well in Taipei as I think he had hoped, I think his momentum's a little bit slowed down. Obviously, Gao Hong'an is still a big victory, but because she's such a hot button no longer candidate, mayor-elect right now, I think it's really going to matter how she navigates sort of this next year as a new mayor with all these scandals and how much Ko wants to distance or not distance himself from her.
What do you think about the TPP's influence as a third party now? I
think it's still very much limited to a couple spots of Taiwan. I think Hsinchu and Taipei are where they have their biggest voter base. And the big challenge is there is not a very clear policy about what exactly it is they're offering beyond just the fact that they're not the KMT or the DPP. I think the TPP is going to be having a bit of an identity crisis as it goes into the 2024 election because its ability to stave off having to have a very clear party platform has worked so far. But as time goes on, it needs to be able to offer voters something more than just we're not the DPP or the KMT.
So Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je has actually had a lot of city-to-city exchanges with Shanghai. And what do you think about his relationship with China and his China policy?
Yeah, you know, that's really what lost a lot of his initial base of support. So when Ko first came out, he was very sympathetic to the Sunflower Movement, the New Power Party, these very pro-independence-leaning groups. And then he suddenly took a sharp turn and became much more open and warm to China. The infamous Liang An Yi Jia Qin saying that he kind of repeated quite a bit was sort of a deal breaker for a lot of his initial base of support. So even though Ke is someone who has taken advantage of these types of city-to-city relations in the past, it has not always politically worked out well for him. And it's really sort of pushed the TPP into being perceived as not really above blue-green politics and more of a light blue party.
So what do you think his China policy is?
Well, the TPP has said formally that their official stance on independence is very similar to that of the DPP and the KMT in that Taiwan is already a sovereign country as the ROC Taiwan and that there's no further need to change the current status quo. That's pretty standard. But, of course, you know, beyond just that very nice rhetorical line, you see things like Guo Taiming and a bunch of former KMT politicians joining the TPP. And those politicians are not neutral. We know that they are very KMT and China-leaning. And so for them to be a part of the TPP speaks volumes more about what their China policy is, much more than just sort of the nice soundbite that they give to the media when asked the question.
Well, thank you very much, Lev. I've been speaking with Lev Nachman. He's a political scientist at National Zhengzi University.